To the participants of the 9th National Business and Management Conference, good day. I am Nerissa Dela Viña, presenter on the research entitled The Degree of Employee Intention and Antecedent Variables in State University During the Implementation of ISO 9001, a Correlation Analysis. The following are the content of this presentation. First, introduction. Second, theoretical and conceptual frameworks. Third, methodology. Fourth, results. Fifth, discussion. And sixth, recommendation. The ISO 9000 series of quality standards was created to help organizations meet customer expectations. Many of these organizations all over the world encountered challenges in meeting the ISO 9001 standard requirements. In the Philippines, organizations have started to pay interest in ISO certification. Despite of these difficulties, the State University in the province of North Cotabato applied for ISO certification. However, such implementation is not smooth sailing because of the sentiments of many employees in the preparation and implementation process. This study investigates the involvement intention of employees in the ISO implementation, explicitly determining the extent of employee involvement and antecedents variable in terms of attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control. Lastly, the investigation also focused on the degree of relationship between employee involvement and antecedent variables. The conceptualization is based on the theory of planned behavior. As stated in the TPB framework, the antecedents of intention to get involved includes attitude towards involvement, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control. Attitude towards involvement entails the employee's belief and evaluation in conforming the ISO standard, while subjective norm is the social influence component of employees' decision-making whether to get involved or not in the implementation of the ISO standards. And lastly, perceived behavioral control is the employee's perception of how easy or challenging to be involved in the performance of ISO, given the situation of having or not having complete volition on its behavior. Due to the survey's goal of determining whether or not there is relationship between variables, the survey research design is correlational. The survey was carried out at the University of Southern Mindanao, the only state university in North Cotabato. There were 140 participants in the study, all of whom were permanent teaching faculty from across the university's various colleges. The analysis was based on a total of 138 usable questionnaires. The survey questionnaires was developed following Eisen's 1985 concept of creating questionnaire based on TPB. Descriptive statistics such as frequency counts, percentages, weighted mean were employed. Lastly, Pearson moment correlation was used to investigate the relationship between the antecedent variables and the intention to participate in the implementation of ISO. The following are the results of the investigation. Respondents had a strong overall intention of getting involved in the ISO 9001 implementation in the university. Subjective norms were the most dominant among the antecedents, followed by perceived behavioral control and attitude towards ISO implementation as seen in Table 1. The result shows that among the antecedents, perceived behavioral control has the highest correlation to intention based on its correlational coefficient, followed by subjective norm, then attitude towards the intention. The highlights of the discussion are the following. First, the level of involvement intended by faculty members was insufficient because of the following reason. Preparation time was too short, bulk documentation, lack of knowledge about ISO 9001 standard, and insufficient budget for ISO preparation activities. These findings corroborates to Paul's 2014 findings that not all employees had complete understanding of the ISO 9001 system in use in the organization. The findings of this study also validate the study of One Zone 2015, which concluded that firms' low level of awareness was significantly impacted by lack of training, exposure, and actual learning about ISO. Then second, most of the respondents considered support of the immediate supervisor to their involvement intention. This implied that management support is important to the involvement of the faculty members in the ISO 9001 implementation. This conforms to what the study of Coyle-Shapiro 1999 revealed, that management has an important role in encouraging the employees to get involved in the quality management implementation. Then, most of the respondents have favorable attitude because of the perception that their involvement in the ISO 9001 implementation is good, has a valuable contribution, advantageous, and satisfying. And fourth, the respondents show strong control in the possibility of involving themselves in the ISO 9000 while have neutral control over the factors because of respondents left with no choice but to follow what is required by the organization. Based on the follow-up interview conducted by some of the respondents, employees were not yet ready for the changes as well as reluctant to this move of the university because of the bulk documentation during the preparation process. This problem in preparation of ISO certification has been identified also as problem in the study of Capistrano 2008. And fifth, the result indicates that all TPB variables such as attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavior control are all significantly associated with intention. The perceived behavior control has a positive and moderate correlation with the involvement intention, which regarded as the most important variable in this study. This means that the greater the degree of perceived behavior control, the greater the degree of involvement intention. Based on the findings, the employees don't have strong control because the management has enforced the implementation with not enough knowledge about what they are doing, which left them with no choice but to follow what is required by the organization. Therefore, perceived behavior control is the strongest variable in the theory of planned behavior, since the consideration of such variable will likely increase the involvement intention of the employees if given focus by the administrators and immediate supervisors. The following are the recommendations of this study. First, educating the employees about the ISO 9001 standard. Second, develop the employees' potential by empowering them to understand and practice the standard without hesitation in the implementation. Third, future researchers should focus on their study on the behavior of employees towards ISO 9001 implementation, not only in higher education institutions, but also in other industries. And lastly, future researchers should investigate the causal relationship among variables, since the study focuses only on the associations of the variables. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.